Just let me know when, Matt.
Yeah. All right, you're good.
Chris, do you have the flag?
Sounds good.
Chris, do you have a flag?
He's pointing
Yes,
to
I
it.
was pointing to it, but I know everyone can't see me.
Okay,
But yes,
there you go.
flag is ready.
Gotcha.
Okay.
All right, I didn't know if
All right. Thank you. All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Averill Park Central School District Board of Education meeting on this Monday, October 19th, 2020. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. So we'll just move right into our superintendent's report.
All righty. I will share the screen here. All right, so we'll start with our regular news and updates. As you know, we are meeting virtually tonight, and after canvassing, the board decided to remain virtually through the end of this calendar year, assuming, of course, the governor continues the executive orders. They have been extended, usually very close to the date in which they expire. So we assume they're going to. In the meantime, we are going to start looking into live streaming options so the board can decide if you want to move in that direction on a permanent basis. As you know, pre-pandemic, we were recording and putting on the website. We're now currently live streaming to meet the executive order requirements, and we have talked about whether it's time to go to a live streaming. That recording, that of course would be recorded and posted on the website as well. The second paragraph is new since Friday's board report. The Questar 3 leadership typically attends one board meeting for each of the components, and they asked if we are interested in having them do a presentation this year. It would be virtual, and they asked if they asked for topics of interest if they are going to come to us. They try to kind of tailor it a little bit. I think it's pretty general, but they do try and give you some specifics. We've had them talk, I think, recently about the Rensselaer Education Center and some things that have been directly impacting us. So I guess my first question for the board is, are you interested in having Dr. Cruz and her folks come virtually to attend a meeting to present to us?
Out of enthusiasm there, Jim.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you wanted us to answer that now?
No,
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have to. I just.
My vote is yes.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, Jim, it's nice for them to be able to kind of share if there's anything new that they wanted to put out to us as a board. I was just trying to think through, was there anything in particular that would be helpful to better understand from them? I'm not sure from the administrative team if there's particular items that would be helpful to better understand in terms of some new services that they may have coming up, or how are they functioning in this new world of COVID, and in terms of being able to educate our students as wholly as possible.
I would always welcome them as well.
I'm always interested in hearing what else is going on and whatever information we can get coming in. I want to hear it.
I'm okay too with hearing them.
Yep.
All right. I assume so. I think they've come, at least since I've been back, they've come every year. So I'll let them know, and I'll talk with Matt and Michael and Kim and see if there's anything on our list as well. Nothing jumped out at me either. I think this year everything is just so kind of different with the COVID response type stuff. So, but we'll put our heads together and see if we can come up with some specific topics, or if not, we'll just kind of get a general update from them. A couple capital project things we wanted to kind of talk about. This is also new. We're doing a stakeholder email. We have a group that we've come up with that we're going to email and really just offer them the opportunity to receive our capital project video series. As you know, we're doing those videos and we're getting them out through social media, through our website, through our own email. But we realize that not everyone is on our mailing list, right? Because it's really just people who are in our student information system as parents or as guardians. So we want to reach out to folks, and you can see a portion of the email is there for what what the email is going to say. Just let them know that we're doing the project and that we want them to be part of the process, and we want to make sure we're getting the information out. It's simply to educate the community the best of our ability, and we don't want to neglect anyone and make sure we're getting it out. So we're going to ask them if they're interested to respond back to us, and then when we push out a video or a communication, we'll just include them on a separate list, and then they can put it out to their membership group based on whatever channels they're currently using. So that group would include, as of right now, the local business associations, Booster Club, Kiwanis, the foundation, groups like that. So
can we also do it to maybe community sports organizations? Because I know we have some contacts, being that they rent our facilities, all those types of organizations. And then the one last thing, suggestion, and you can tell me if that's way too much, is what if we put, if you're interested in receiving emails, to contact somebody so we can put them on a listserv of just the general community. So we put that in the advertiser. If people want, I know we've had saying, here's all the information, or maybe we just say all the information is here, which we already do, but I didn't know if there was other people who wanted to be specific. So just a thought. Maybe we're okay with what we're doing.
We've been doing the advertiser. We're adding a little site, like we have the weekly column. We've been adding or including, I should say, a capital project blurb, a little update for each one. And that does say for more information on things happening in the district, or the website. My only hesitation with a separate email list is that it's another thing to maintain.
Right.
That's what we kind of thought by going through this. These groups have their own distribution channels. I know as a member of Kiwanis, I get emails from them, or, we just figure they have their groups when they schedule their meetings, and it kind of be a pretty good cross section. I think the booster clubs and the youth sports groups are fantastic. We'll definitely include them.
And I don't know if it's worth any of the local churches. They do email once in a while. So that might be
there's a Sand Lake area churches. I think SLAC is the acronym they go by. That I'm sure we could track down, a way of helping there. Long range planning committee as well, Jim. I don't know for some of those folks who had previously been involved, it may be helpful just to make sure they're aware.
Okay. No one has a offhand, I'm sure, a contact for that community church group, do I?
I do. Yeah. I'll share, at least I have the pastor here at the Round Church at Church of the Covenant. I could share with you, and he could probably get you in touch with him.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, just as a starting point, that'd be great.
Sure. I'll shoot it over to you. Yeah.
Yeah, because right now, Chris, he's probably the most seasoned one of that group.
Oh, really? Has he become the veteran at this point?
Well, yeah, because Reverend Pat left, and so we had a new pastor come in before COVID started at Salem. So, yeah,
that's true. Okay. Yep.
Sorry.
The next section is just about the tennis court piece. We wanted to make sure we talked to you about that, and Michael join in at any point here as well. This was in the board update. We kind of look back, and we've been doing a lot of research. Michael's really been doing the research. The 1996 capital project, and kind of cross-referencing to making sure we're not forgetting things. I think you always remember what you remember and forget what you forgot. So the one thing that kind of came out was that tennis court and lights on it. And it's something that was part of the strategic plan. Because I know when I first got here and talking to Coach Abatello, he, pointed out that we are the only tennis courts in the district and we don't have lights, and not from a, certainly would benefit competitively, athletically, but more as a community place to play, that we really don't offer that in our district at all. So Michael's went through the steps with Jeff to find out what would have to be done and needs to be done. You can kind of see it in there what we would need, the board's approval to provide a description of the lighting component in the newsletter. And that enables us to document the intent to add it as an alternate project component. So I don't know if you want to discuss that now or later or what, but I wanted to make sure we brought that up tonight too.
I can attest to how busy those courts can be when there is daylight, having played there quite a bit during the COVID period. I guess the only thing I'd say is just we'd probably want to be cognizant of our neighbors in terms of how late the lights would stay on.
You being one of those neighbors.
I won't get the glow this far up here.
That's what I was thinking. There's so many trees there. Would it really
Yeah.
make it?
Yeah, I'm not even sure. I mean, it'd be interesting to see. I mean, I know there's some folks that are just kind of on the other side of those woods. I don't know. I mean, I guess it's probably no different than the football field.
Yeah. Well, one of the things is, and I don't think those the light poles for tennis, they're quite as high as the football, but they also now, according to what we've been told, there's just, this new design, the way these lights, Jim talked about it at, I think, the last meeting, how specific they are to the area. So we would hope that would help alleviate any of those concerns about that. So, and again, it's in the event that there's available funding, I'd be great, but we don't know, but it's good to have it available, that if it's, we're lucky enough that the bidding comes in right, that we could actually, knock that off too. Because it seems that tennis courts were a very popular idea in that project, because they were, as I mentioned, to let Jim know, that the upper parking lot at the middle school was also supposed to be 4 lighted tennis courts from that 96 project. So I guess that didn't happen either, but it's a nice parking lot.
Yeah, Michael mentioned that, and I got to tell you, for the years I was at Algonquin, every time I drove by that parking lot, I always wondered what there had to be it just didn't fit. I'm like, there's got to be a reason. You always wonder those things. When he said that, I'm like, that makes total sense. That was tennis courts, because there's plenty of parking in the building. But
it's helpful for sporting events up in that corner.
Right, that's true. All right. Any concern with that then being in as an alternate? The next thing, just wanted to mention, I know there's always a lot of talk, and we've talked a little bit in board leadership about it, with the kind of much rumored and anticipated 20% cut from the state. So that update, I wanted to just make sure you were aware of, and for the people watching, certainly, because I know there's angst about this in the community. The state aid unit at the education department has indicated that the October payments are going to be at 100%. So we're expecting that based on the latest information we had. So it's really just more of a confirmation that was happening. The facility use fees, I think we could probably get into when we do the policy review. I just wanted to have that information in there as a reminder. Again, something we've kind of talked about time and over again and looked into. The belief, at least I think, speaking for myself and Michael, that it just kind of seems fundamentally wrong that we're charging a community to use the campus and the facilities that they pay for already as taxpayers. And most, if not all, districts do it. It's just something we've talked about, and with what's happened to the groups recently, it was just, as we reviewed the policy, it's like, well, maybe now's the time to have that discussion, which again, we can do during that if you'd like, but I just wanted to bring that up as something we want to talk about later and have the information there so I don't forget. And that is that portion of the board report. And we'll go to our celebration of success video. So again, thanks to Brian, who does a great job with our videos. And then last but certainly not least on our report, it is School Board Recognition Week.
Right.
So typically, we kind of walk around the table and shake your hand and hand you certificates. This year, I'll just kind of shake your hand this way and virtually do it. Your certificates are in the mail, thanks to Linda. So you'll be getting those. And I shared with you on Friday the little blurb we did just to recognize folks. That's going to go out this week. We do, in all seriousness, appreciate the tremendous amount of work that goes into being on the board and the amount of information you are processing and reading through and the decisions you're making. And it is not glamorous. You certainly don't do it for the paycheck. So we appreciate it. You know, speaking, I know for myself and the administrative team and our faculty and our staff and our community, it is a thankless job, but one that you folks do a great job of, and we really appreciate the support. This board in particular, I think, has always been, in my time back, has just been unbelievably supportive and willing to listen and hear and trust and support. And it's just a great relationship. And we thank you for that. So thank you for all of your great work.
Thank you.
That concludes the report. And turn it back over to you, Jesse.
Okay, thank you. That moves us to item number 3, the public comment session. So community members seeking to provide questions or comment to the Board of Education should email them to the district clerk. And you can see the link there, primoL@apcsd.org. So please, if you have comments to submit, you can submit them now. That would be great. Thank you. Item number 4, the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
Megan?
Thank you, Megan.
Doug?
Chris?
Thank you, Doug. Seconded. Any questions, comments? I wanted to say thank you to the Averill Park Booster Club for their donation of the 2 soccer goals. I wanted to say thank you to the Hannaford Help Schools for their donation. I wanted to thank Sky High Adventures for their donation of supplies. And then the Averill Park Wrestling Club, I want to thank them for their donation of the 3 gladiator training walls. Does anyone have any other comments or questions on the consent agenda? Okay, hearing none, I'll call it to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Just making sure I got everyone. Abstentions? Okay, passed unanimously. Thank you. That moves us on to item number 5. A resolution to approve the district's internal audit report issued by Michael Wolf Advisory Services dated September 15th, 2020 for the fiscal year end June 30th, 2020. Do I have a motion?
Anne?
Anne, thank you.
Chris?
Thank you, Chris. Any questions, comments, discussion?
I would like to just say that, as usual, our service providers step up and really do an amazing job, provide a lot of information and great oversight and detail. And I always appreciate, having all of the information and not really having that many questions to ask, because they provided anticipating what we might want to know. So I appreciate that.
Excellent. I'm glad to hear that, Megan. Thank you. Any other discussion?
I just want to say that I also appreciate that they are willing to share with us it's hard to say negatives, the imperfections and give us an opportunity to correct them. And of course, you know, Michael follows up promptly with a corrective action plan every time. But I mean, that's why we do this, is so that we can step back and look at any inconsistencies or any imperfections or things that need work. And, you know, they're not kowtowing. They tell us where our failings are. And so we have an opportunity to make things better for the district and for the community. So I appreciate that they're forthright about that.
Yes, certainly. Thank you, Anne. Any other discussion? Okay, well, thank you for providing that. All right, we'll call it to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So it passed unanimously. Thank you. Item number 6, a resolution to approve the district's corrective action plan as it relates to the findings in the internal audit report that we just approved. Do I have a motion?
Megan?
Megan, thank you. Second? Anne, thanks. Any discussion?
Yes, can I make a couple of comments?
Absolutely.
So the first item is the adoption of the federal uniform guidance, which is incorporated into your policy 6700 tonight for the first reading, and it's the grade area. So it's additional language that's been required by the federal government for related to our grants, that we have, and purchasing around those grants and the expectations and the requirements that they have. We've actually known we're deficient on this, but we were waiting in thinking that we would have the updated version from school boards. But so now it's been like 2 years of waiting. And so we've just gone ahead and done what we need to do. And this is a fairly consistent policy that what we've adopted with other school districts have. So I'm hopeful when school boards does get to policy, the 6700s or the 6000s, that this will be consistent with what they are recommending. We can evaluate that then, but I'm afraid we instead of continuing to be non-compliant with the federal guidance, we should adopt the policy as I know it is, will make us compliant in that case. So so that's what that one is. And the second one, it really relates to, and we talked a bit about it tonight. Previously, the comptroller, when I've been experiencing these audits, they were looking more at making sure, so professional services, making sure that from time to time that school districts were bidding out a school physician, which we've done a couple of years ago, the independent auditor, which we did recently. We've done the internal auditor, which we did last year. The architect, which we did, I don't know, 18 months or so ago. Those kinds of things. So when you think of professional services and your school attorney, and what Mike has said is that they also will be looking at things like, so we have a service provider that does asbestos testing for us. So if we have a situation where we have to do some kind of penetrations in a building, and we are aware that there's a hot spot, or we have to make them test for asbestos if we want to do some types of renovation to make sure. I'll give you an example. We were doing some work on the floor of the cafetorium at West Sand Lake, and we were pretty confident that was, according to our plan, that was a potentially what we call a hotspot for asbestos, and And so we had to use this firm to come in and test. Well, we have a relationship with them. We don't spend, tens of thousands of dollars with them every year. But those are the kinds of firms that they are talking about that, their description is a service that has specialized technical skills, expertise or knowledge. They exercise professional judgment or a high degree of creativity. So we got to kind of expand our vision of what these types of firms are that require RFP or some, request for proposal or some type of, competitive bidding under the umbrella of this. I mean, another example is our water testing, but we were using, a particular lab and that was working out great. It's sort of our lab. And they're not easy to find for water testing. So those are ones that he had mentioned to me. Not huge dollar amounts, but he does say that those, will be identified by the comptroller as those kinds of services that should fall under the professional services component of our purchasing policy. So we're just saying in the corrective action plan, yep, we're going to do a better job of expanding our scope to incorporate that definition into assessing, these some of these services that we're using that would be classified as professional services.
Can I just add something quick to Michael's comment?
Of course.
We all know when he said school boards that he means NISBA, but I just want to clarify that you said when school board hasn't come through for 2 years, that we are in the process of going through NISBA to have our policies reviewed. When you say school boards, that's not us.
Sorry.
We're
the school board.
I just wanted to clarify that in case anybody's watching and they don't understand. They wonder that if we're deficient in it. We haven't received it yet. So I just wanted to say when you said school boards, you didn't mean
No. Yes, thank you. Thank you. We use a lot of sort of jargon and abbreviations and things, and we think everybody knows what we're talking about, but I appreciate that clarification, right?
They don't? No. Of course. All right. Thank you both for that good description. Michael, we appreciate that. Any other discussion? Okay, hearing none, we'll call it to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. I think actually that time I heard everyone. Okay, so that passed unanimously. Thank you. On to item number 7, presentation on the special education plan.
Okay, I'm just going to share my screen with you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Oh, let me stop mine. Hold on.
Yep, thank you.
All right.
Okay, so thank you very much for having me here tonight. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with the board about some of the regulation requirements that we have to do for the state. And the special education plan is actually one of those requirements. So it's a pretty hefty plan. It's got a lot of information in it. I won't go through every single page because I don't want to bore people to tears, but it does have some pieces that I wanted to kind of highlight for you tonight. There are some of the pieces are standing sections, so they will continually be in there year after year. With some of the highlighted sections are the spots that will change year to year based on our numbers that we have. So I know the plan was shared with you earlier, so everybody has that. So basically just on page 2 of the plan is just the regulations put forth in part 200 of New York State regards to what has to be in the plan for each school district. The plan actually should be submitted to the Board of Education for approval on a yearly basis. So this is something that I will bring forward to Dr. Franchini once a year to bring forward to you so that it's approved. Then if you, on page 3 is just our department overview and some quick stats. Now these stats are a year old because when we do our data push in October, it's off of our beds day data. So the information that's in here is from our numbers of disabilities and classification rate for last year, the numbers will be refreshed for next year moving forward. So it'll constantly be evolving for you.
Camille, can you screen?
Oh, I apologize.
Yeah, so that way people who are watching it
Yep.
can see it as you're talking.
Yep, thank you. So this is the department overview and the quick stats for the 1920. When I did the information, we had 55 preschoolers with a disability, and then I gave the breakdown of how many students with disabilities we have in each of our buildings and at out of district placements, which are our full day BOCES. We have homeschooled students, and this has changed a little bit with the COVID and and then at our day treatments such as Wildwood, Langen, and LaSalle.
So I hate to break in, but you said 1920. Is that for last year, or is it actually should be 2021?
No, so this is all our information from our beds day data from 1920.
So it is 1920.
Yes.
Okay, because then you said with the COVID and moving forward, my brain was ooh, which way?
Yeah, so I apologize. So the homeschooled numbers, probably next year we will see an increase in that, simply because some families are choosing at this time to homeschool their students more than they have in the past.
Sure. Okay. So thank you. Sorry about that.
Nope, that's okay. So this page is right off of our 1920 data for the beds and our state reporting. So basically it breaks down all the areas of disability for our student body and the numbers that we have in each age category. And again, there are some spikes here and there. So, this as a department are things that we're going to be looking at in-house to find out, are we providing the best educational opportunities for our students in the least restrictive environment, and are we meeting their needs on a consistent basis? And then the next couple of areas are actually, this is going to be that least restrictive environment piece I was chatting about. So we currently have about 246 of our students with disabilities that are in the regular general education classroom, 80% or more of their day, but we have 132 in a general ed classroom, only 40 to 79% of the day. So that's pretty high. So this is where we really need to look at our continuum of services for our students and really need to see what we can put in place to provide them the least restrictive environment and still have them access college and career ready skills and be prepared to move on beyond us when they graduate. The next several pages, and I'm going to scroll through this, is just the information off of the definitions from the state website. So I just broke it down into the areas of disability. So there would be a definition of what all the disabilities are and what we have to use when we classify a student as a student with a disability. This next page is on page 7. It starts our glossary of terms and definitions, and this breaks down what our programs and services look like in accordance with New York state regulations. And then here's our related services piece. So the definitions, they seem to go on for quite many pages, and this is information that'll stay standard within the plan for us. So I apologize for making people dizzy, but it just gives you some background information.
I thought that was very useful when I was reading through the plan,
Thank you.
all those definitions. So thank you for including them.
Yep. Almost to the end here. So then we did create a different process for our annual review process. So on a yearly basis, we are mandated by federal and state law to create an annual review for each of our students with disabilities. And we did change this process and procedure because of just some things that I had noticed coming into the position and things that I had feedback I had gotten from staff and secretarial staff about how they would like to see this move forward a little bit more consistently. So we are actually developing drafts 10 days in advance. Information is put in there. We still have the discussion at the table, but what is going to happen is when we start annual reviews at the last week of February and into March, those will consistently go to the Board of Education instead of waiting until June to go before the board. Because this allows us to make sure that we're keeping with due process for the family and the children, and it allows you as a board to know the fiscal implications of the programs that we're recommending. And it also allows, if there's a change or a switch or something's not quite right, that parents have a time to get a hold of us in the office and their child's case manager, so we can make sure there's no more issues or glitches moving forward. This next piece, I'm sorry?
Sorry, Camille, I was going to ask, the annual review process, that's for students who are already established with an IEP, correct? So this does not necessarily relate to students who maybe need to be evaluated to receive services, but that are not receiving it?
So if you're an initial referral and you have not had a CSE, like we haven't started the CSE process, once we get written consent from a parent, we have 60 days from the time that signed consent to evaluate and hold a CSE meeting for that student. So that's the initial CSE process. And then if there's a child that's qualified for services and say, we have to have a requested review during the middle of the year, or there's something the parent wants to meet on, those, again, we are actually doing the meetings, having the meetings, and those are going to the board at the next board meeting date. We're trying to be very consistent with that, and staff understand that new process. But what I shared with you is something for our annual review. So they usually call it March Madness, not because of basketball, but for the simple fact that that's when all our annual reviews would take place. So they're going to start at the end of February, go through to the end of March, and then every student on K-12 will have had a CSE meeting by that point, unless the parent has asked for it to be rescheduled, or if because of weather, we had to reschedule it to a later date. Does that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay, thanks. So this slide shows the continuum of services. So this is actually showing us from at the very bottom of the pyramid, the least restrictive environment for our children. And then
I'm sorry, Camille, this is Chris. I'm sorry. I'm not seeing the presentation. I'm not sure if others aren't. I'm seeing you chatting, but I'm not seeing the actual presentation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is everybody seeing the presentation?
I can see it.
I can see you.
Oh,
I can see it, but
lucky
Chris,
me.
if you can't see it, it was also in Jim's email
Okay.
that you could scroll
No,
through.
it's actually, I can't see that one. I had that open earlier and now it's not loading. But I can see Camille's.
So you need me to, you want me to reshare my screen again?
I don't know.
It's worth a try. That'd be great. Thanks.
Sure, yep. So I'll stop and I'll reshare. Hold on.
Got it now. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for letting me know. So this triangle on this page shows that continuum of services from a regular classroom or general education classroom all the way up until a residential program placement. So there's two things about the pyramid to kind of have in your mind. When you look at it, that broad base at the bottom is where we should be meeting almost 80% of our students' needs, right? And then as you go up to the pyramid, not only are you getting into a more restrictive setting, but you're also looking at smaller ratios or percentages of students. So the triangle, supports two different ways to look at data as we move forward. One of the programs that's in here that's optional is integrated co-teaching, which I know is something that staff have asked us to look at. So we are starting to look at that process for our students to see if that is something that we can move forward to as a school district. It is not mandated in regulations. It's something that's an optional program choice if districts can support that program. So this is currently what we offer within our school district. We offer related services, consult, pull out, resource room. We have self-contained classes. We also have students in our BOCES placements, day treatment, and we do have some students in residential facilities. And then this goes through and talks about related services for students that are preschool students with disabilities and what their programmings would look like. And then this piece just goes through and talks about the Part 200 regulation about what consult service teacher services look like and the amount of time that students are mandated to have it on their IEP as compared to other services. We also have Robert C. Parker is the private school within our district, and we do have one of our students attending that program. This next piece just talks about the space allocation for special education. So this actually ends up being with any new building projects that we may have. We need to ensure that there is definitely mandated square footage requirements that we have to make sure that we are abiding by. We do offer instructional materials in alternative formats such as video, audio, or brailing for our students. And then the last two pieces are classification rates. It has increased over the past couple of years. It's our hope that working with Kate Dorgan and the RTI team that we have and looking at how we're providing instruction across the board for our students, we may notice that the numbers of classification rates go down because we're able to better serve our students in the general ed setting. And then the last piece of this would be the special education budget, and that's actually for this school year. And that is the end of the report. Is there anything that I can answer for anybody?
Can you maybe touch on how you think it's going in terms of with the altered school schedule for hybrid at middle school and high school, and then students that may be 100% virtual at any level? What are some of the obstacles that you are facing, you think, with that altered structure as it relates to the less restrictive versus more restrictive services?
So I can tell you that our school district, like probably the majority of school districts in New York State, are really, this has been a difficult transition for our students with disabilities, right? And I think what we're seeing is students that are 100% virtual, we're meeting their IEP needs the best we possibly can. But some of the services that they have on their IEPs is that consult teacher service model. And so, it's different when it's virtual because it's not that give and take in a classroom setting that you might have, when you're live in session. So that virtual piece is a little bit more difficult. When you look at the middle school and high school model, we did talk about bringing a certain group of children back full time. And after going through that process with staff, we realized that we would not be able to meet their needs, plus do the virtual pieces that we were going to try to accomplish. So we only brought back our students in our 12-in-1 programs. And I have had some parents reach out to me concerned with that. I've had parents say, what can we do differently? What, how am I supposed to handle this with my student? What can you help us with? And when that happens, it's come back to, well, let's get back with the team. Let's talk about it with your classroom teachers. What program modifications and supports can we put in place to help support you? How can I reach out, or the CSE chairperson for the 6 through 12 reach out, or your child's case manager to help with that, those pieces of struggles that their child might have. And at this point, those have been successful, and I haven't had parents call me back and say, it's still not working. What else can we do? I do know that what we're offering students is very consistent with what it is offered across, in at least the capital region area, because I am on a video listserv with all the BOCES in Questar and Cap Region, and the models are really similar.
Camille, I have a multifaceted question, I guess.
Okay. With
the rising trajectory of the number of the population, the percentage of the population, how does that compare with similar sized districts? Do you know?
Yep. So are you talking about the classification rate? This one on this page right here?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So, we're high. I'm not going to lie to you. Typically school districts our size are right around the 15% mark. If you'd like, I'd be happy to pull a report for you guys, and I can share it with Dr. Franchini. He can pass it on to you, and I can pull the all the districts in Cap Region and Questar. It's all off the state website, so to pull that data would be fairly easy. And if you want, I can give a 5-year, so you can see the 5-year trend. If you'd like that, I'd be happy to do that for you.
I was just thinking, like, without knowing other districts, it's really, and not being involved in this aspect of education in any way, I didn't really know how to take that number.
Yep.
What does that number mean? Now it like you say, just off the top of your head, you're saying it's slightly higher than other similar sized districts.
Yep.
What would you generally attribute that to? Or is it just the way it is? Is there something going on in our district that would you suspect makes it higher?
Well, I think it has to be looked at holistically, right? So in my previous district where I was director of special education before Niskayuna, we had a climbing classification rate, right? And it really took us to look at not only as a department, but a district, but how are we providing instructional practices across the board for all our students? Because when you start looking at instructional practices, are we providing differentiation in instruction? Are we providing entrance and exit tickets for our students? Are we providing lessons that may span a week, but have different endpoints so our students know where they're going, when they're going to be there, and how they're done, how it's when they're done. And by shifting that instructional piece, right, and really having a strong RTI model, which is response to intervention, which I know with Kate kind of overseeing it, we are starting to revamp that a little bit. We have to look at, if a student qualifies for RTI, are we doing our baseline data and our progress monitoring data on them consistently enough to see if there's progress? And if not, are we shifting our instruction to meet the needs of a student? There are ways when you start looking at that and you start looking at, why are we providing this level of service for our student, right? So I'm meeting with the team leaders. I was actually supposed to meet with them next week. It's gotten pushed off a little bit to look at our continuum that we offer. So when a student qualifies for a service, what is our entrance criteria for that service? And when do we know when they're done with that service? And just because a child is a student with a disability, it doesn't mean that they get the gamut of services that we offer in that building. We really have to be careful of, if I'm a child with a writing disability, how does it impact across the content area, and only give them that service that they need and not over service them. Right. And it's hard because we all want the best thing for our kids. We want them to do really well. We want them to have good results through high school and get on to what they want to do in life. We hate to see a child fail, and I'm not recommending that. But what I'm recommending is slowing the pace a little bit and really taking some in-depth looks at what we're providing our children on a daily basis, and how can we model and manage that data to make sure that they're making progress. I know it's a long-winded answer to your question.
No, it's very, very good. And now that we're looking, the most recent data being 1920, I can only assume that, given this oddball, very strange year, that number will likely increase again for this year when you report next year. But I just didn't know if there was maybe more parents are, something as benign as more parents are aware of the services that we offer, so they take them. But that isn't the case at all. You're analyzing it based on response to intervention.
I am, and if a student qualifies for service, are we constantly looking at their levels, and are they appropriate? Are they too much? When you know, we're supposed to support a child, but there does come a point where we've gotten them to where they need to be and they're flying, you know, and we should be at that point. It's a good thing to classify your child and say, you know, they're good. We're gonna watch them. We're gonna make sure they're okay, but they're ready to go. And we have to trust in ourselves as educators and a school district to get to that point where it's okay. And parents, I think, are very trustworthy of our educators that we have in this district. I think they know that we have children's best interest at heart. So I think to create that journey with the family and let them know that we're going to support their child, but when it's time, we are going to let their child spread their wings and go. I think families would be receptive to that. And, you know, even if a parent does refer a child, they still have to go through the committee process and they still have to qualify. You know, so even if we do have a lot of parent referrals, they still have to go through all the steps to see if they meet one of the criteria for a disability in New York State.
I do very much appreciate all the work that you do for every student. And it's just disheartening to see the numbers going up.
Yeah. Well, and again, it's something that, you know, we need to work on, and that's okay. It's okay to have goals and things to work on, because we always want to get better, right? And not better because our numbers are going down, but better because we're servicing our students in the least restrictive environment and providing everybody with equitable access to their curriculum and education. And that's what we want.
Emil?
Yep.
This is Doug Kelly. How do you handle a student in crisis? I don't know if you have a special room or teachers available and that sort of thing, and the second part of that question is, have you witnessed student stress as a result of the last 6 months or so? Is there an increased incident of a student in crisis in your program?
So you know, for children in crisis, we try to be, from what I've witnessed by being in the buildings and in the classrooms, is we try to be very proactive in our approach on how we work with our students. And what that means is that we're very careful about the environment and the opportunities that we give our students so that they have the support they need, so that, you know, in crisis could look like a lot of things. It could be very quietly a student just being non-compliant, upwards to a child in crisis physically acting out. So we currently do not offer at the K-5 level a program for emotionally disturbed students. At the middle school, they do have a program for some behaviorally challenged students, but we do not have timeout rooms in our district. Timeout rooms are regulated by New York State regulations, and there are several criteria you have to have in place. And we currently don't have those rooms or the process to have that spot for our students who are physically acting out. And I think to answer that second part of that question, what I have witnessed is that the district and staff and administrators have been very diligent in trying to provide input from our students and our families about how their children feel and how the kids feel on a day-to-day basis. So, you know, I've been part of the survey that we did across the building at the high school level, which is going to drive how we're providing SEL work across the high school. I know at the middle school and elementary school that they've been doing surveys as well, just to get a pulse on where our students are. And we already have some activities and procedures in place to help support students there. So I don't know if I've seen an increase or I've seen students be more open to share where they might be at this point. You know, in the past, a student might be very reserved to reach out for help, where I think now they're more willing to seek a counselor and a trusted adult that they could share what's going on in their life, and then we can get them the support they need.
Oh, that's good to hear. Thank you.
Yep.
Camille, so actually 2 points. I don't know that I understand or the sentiment of our percentage being higher as disheartening. I actually take it the opposite way, only in that I am a parent of a special education student, you know, a student that does receive services. And I can tell you that the district has been amazing as far as, you know, when I have a question, the responsiveness and such. I think that the high percentage could be affected in the way that we have a parental community here that's pretty engaged with the student population. So you have a parent that when they're paying attention. So when things are coming home or when assignments are coming back, and they're seeing their students struggle, they're reaching out and saying what's going on, which is leading to evaluation and then the positive, you know, the diagnosis and then services. But we also are blessed to have a very talented teacher population in our district that is instrumental in communicating with parents and, you know, helping, I think, to identify the struggles of our student population. So I don't know that I take the high percentage as being a bad thing, although I am getting the impression that we don't want it to be a higher level. So I guess my question is, you know, is that something that people look at us and see it as a negative, that we have a higher student population that are identified to receive services? And then my other,
Yep,
I'm
go ahead.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
My other question was, if you have a student that is, you know, struggling and someone is reaching out, if they're already diagnosed with, you know, something that would automatically qualify them for services, what is the evaluation process at that point?
So I appreciate your the information that you provided me. Thank you very much. And you know, I too am a parent of a child with a disability, so I get what it's like to go through the process and have your child qualify. I think when I think of disheartening, I think of, are we over qualifying our students for services when maybe they don't really need it? When maybe if we went through a differentiation of instructional practice, or if we really fine-tuned our environment, educational environment for our student, would they be successful without needing that supportive special education teacher or service in their school day? And then the State Department does look at that percentage. And we can get dinged by the state when it gets to a certain point. Every year, all this data is submitted to the state on Beds Day. And I have been in districts where this was an issue and the State Department did come in. That's actually why I was asked to go back to be a director of special ed in my district that I had before Niskayuna. They were overqualifying students for students with IEPs. So the state does look at this information, because what you're doing is we are supposed to provide free and appropriate education in the least restrictive environment for our children. And when you qualify a student as a student with a disability and you provide services, you're starting to create a more restrictive program for them. And so in some cases and in some school districts, that can in turn lead to issues where students are not with their age appropriate or general education peers. So that's kind of where that information comes from. And then if a child comes to us as a CSE with an outside diagnosis, that doesn't automatically guarantee that they're going to be receiving an IEP. An outside diagnosis means that the parent has gone and gotten an outside evaluation done, which in accordance with Part 200 regulations needs to be part of the committee discussion, but it does not rule the committee decision. So we would take that data, we would look at it, we would see if it's impacting the child's education. And if it is, then as a committee, we would discuss with the parents the programming options that's available for that student. But just because a student has an outside diagnosis, it doesn't mean they automatically qualify as a student with a disability, nor do they qualify for services or programs.
So, and my history within the district is, I think, somewhat unique, because my son is diagnosed, but the majority of the assistance that we received in terms of pinpointing what his needs were actually came through the district, because we were struggling with providers outside the district. And so one of, you know, not your most recent predecessor, but Leslie Voller, who was CSE director several years ago, was, you know, as far as identifying, you know, what the avenues were, I think I guess I'm just not clear. When you say the state dings us, what does that mean?
So if you are found to have numbers that are above what the state considers, they have an average that they look at based on your school population size. And one of the questions was the percentage that we should be around based on our school size. And I'm almost positive it's about 12 to 15%. So if you start to have parents that make complaints to the state, or if you showed consistent data where your classification rate is continually rising, and the state may come in and they could audit you. They can come into the district. They can direct you to provide them with access to all of your IEPs. They can go through the IEPs and start citing districts on procedural safeguards and programs and services. So that's what I mean by ding. I apologize. It was just a word I used. But that's what CSE chairs or directors call it when if you get the state says, well, there's an issue here. You have to give us a corrective action plan. And if you don't, they can come in and audit you.
And then just one last question. Yep. So in terms of those evaluation type services, I know the providers, the school psychologists and such were able to provide evaluations. I think I filled out an evaluation for my son, and then the teacher also filled out like a coupling evaluation to compare, like, was he having the same problems at home that he was having at school, being behavioral and academic, and identifying speech and identifying, and in agreement with your point, he was receiving speech services up to a certain point, and then he no longer needed those. So it was rolled back. And that obviously makes sense if the student no longer needs them. I guess my question is more, are we going to discourage or not be offering those evaluation services for identifying? Are we going to, like, how do we parse out then if we're, I guess I don't understand how we parse out to determine what services are needed. Do we not want to provide the evaluation?
Well, we always
deliberately dense. I just want to understand.
Nope, that's okay. I please understand. I'm not saying at all that we should not give services. I feel that's my area of teaching, right? With special ed. That's why I went to school. I've always wanted to look at what can we do to help a student in a supportive environment be successful. So I think when I look at evaluations coming through, regulations are that we have to look at that RTI process. We can no longer look at the discrepancy model to qualify a student as a student with a disability. So we really have to look at that RTI process and look to see if the student has not been making gains and has had multiple opportunities of different interventions. That plus any rating scales that the parent might fill out or social history the parent might do, plus the academic and IQ testing that the school psychologist will do, and then any other related service testing that might be done. As a committee, with the parent included, we would look at whether the child qualifies or not for special education services. So it's still a committee decision. As a chairperson, I steer the committee to go through the meeting and make sure that we come to a decision by the end of the meeting, and we talk about programs and services for a student. I think where I look at it through a different lens is I always want to look to see what can we do informally in the general ed or least restrictive environment for any child, because not every child needs an IEP to provide them with a service if we gave them maybe a different instructional approach. That's kind of where I was thinking.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate your responses. Thank you.
No, not a problem. Dr. Franchini, is there anything else you need from me at this point?
Where'd you go?
No, I think we are all set. There's any other questions from the board?
Oh, thank you for your time and putting together the plan and the presentation tonight.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity. I do appreciate your questions, and I hope I was able to answer them fully. And I'd be happy to get that data about the classification rate between Cap Region and Quest Arbosi's and give that to Dr. Franchini, and he can forward that on to you so you can get some comparison.
Thank you.
Thanks, Camille. And for the board, again, the plan is to put the plan on the next agenda. So we wanted to give you a chance to read it, have Camille talk through it, and then on the November board meeting agenda, have that on there as a recommended action. So I wanted to give you some time to read and digest and be able to ask questions. Traditionally, these plans don't have to be approved. We just like to do it because we feel like it's the best way to do these things. The plans that we're putting up, we want them to be board approved. And so we'll continue that practice. So.
Good.
All right.
Thank you.
Camille, we won't
Thank
be
you, Camille.
if you leave the meeting. We'll assume you're going to watch it. From whatever minute we're on now until the end, we assume you'll watch it later tonight or tomorrow. But if you
save yourself.
don't feel like you need to stay on right now.
No,
Thank
you
you
need
very
tea.
much, everybody. I appreciate it.
Go have some chamomile tea and get some rest.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. That was informative. On to agenda item number 8, a presentation on the district learning team.
So just to give this set up there too, for Doug in his first year, what we have done since I've been back is we've kind of changed our structure around, and we started this DLT, or district learning team, and we've really worked hard on goals with SMART objectives under them and then action steps under them, so that we're aligned vertically from the buildings to the district to the board. So board district goals, superintendent goals, building level goals are all the same. They're all aligned. We've worked to make our objectives SMART, that acronym of, specific and measurable and all that stuff. I think we've gotten better. The first year was obviously better because we weren't doing it previous to that. Second year, I think we did more with it. We had Kaz to come in and do some good training. Excuse me, Matt's got a background in this from his previous work. I think we were getting better. We had some really exciting training planned in terms of this year with our PLCs, or our professional learning committees, with our district learning team. It's kind of been hamstrung by the pandemic, and we've been responsive really to the needs and desires of our faculty and our administration, as we've really tried to hear them as they've talked through what they're going through now. It's obviously a time of stress and anxiety for the people who are in the trenches. So trying to be sensitive to that, we've kind of pumped the brakes a little bit in terms of not just going full steam ahead with objectives and action steps and pushing people over the edge. So Matt's going to talk through kind of where we are now and then kind of where we see this going as the year progresses. So.
Well, actually, Jim, you just gave a whole presentation.
And we'll move on to the policy review now. Thank you.
Actually, I feel like the concert where you go where the opening act is much better than the headliner, and Camille did such a great job with special ed that I'm hoping that I can hold up to my opening act. So I'm going to share my screen as well. I do have a presentation that I put together for tonight, so I'll get that loaded up. So I want to start by saying, this time last year, I gave a similar presentation, and I was about 6 months on the job. And at that time, I used this image to show where I was at. I don't know if anyone on the board remembers that. This image is still probably pretty appropriate for today, not just for me, but for the whole district. And
that's all of us with distance learning.
Yeah. And I actually think that, maybe there's a different image to use right now with how we're feeling. It kind of goes with what Jim just mentioned. I think we're all kind of feeling we're here. We're still moving forward as a district. We're trying to keep things going, keep the momentum going. That I know for me personally, things that I was trying to get going last year, I still want to keep moving, but it feels at times like you're not going anywhere because of the situation we're in. So I'll explain a little bit about, why this image is appropriate for where we're at today. As a reminder, when I talk about teaching and learning in the district, it's really representative of different groups that make up this department, including myself. As you know, Kate Dorgan has taken on the role of staff and student supports. She focuses on professional development, as Camille mentioned, RTI as well, and is doing a great job of keeping that momentum going with the work we did with RTI. We have a data and accountability team. That's Kristen Card and Doug Kramer. They take care of our, sorry, I gotta let Doug back in. They take care of all of our data reporting, not just what goes out to state, but what we use within our committees and communities to look at student data, student performance. Technology integration has never been more critical than what we found in the last 6 months. And that's largely due to the work of Lynn Burdick and her team and Melissa Weatherwax, who has told me repeatedly she's been waiting 5 years for this, 5 years to really get what she does, for people to get what she does. And she is as busy as she's ever been supporting teachers in their classrooms with new technologies. And then, of course, as you just heard from Camille, and the work, amazing work she has done in a short amount of time with our special ed department. I think when we talk about how we're focusing on this year, there's really 3 things that I want to bring your attention to with curriculum and instruction. This is a challenging time. In a normal year, as educators, we know what we have to teach and when we have to teach it. We may all teach it differently from classroom. We may teach it personally from year to year differently because we want to try something new. But the one thing we know, unless there's some new standards or some shifts, we know what we're supposed to teach. And this year it's really different. We know because of the different models that we're in that we can't teach in the way that we always have. So we've been really trying to focus at our district learning team level and also really at the building level about how we prioritize what's important in our curriculum. We want to make sure that we're picking the important things. We know we can't go at the same pace that we've always gone before. We just won't be able to cover it. Things are taking longer. So we have to make sure that we choose the most important, those power standards that we have heard mentioned in the past. We want to pick those power standards. They're the ones that are the most critical depending on the content area. And then we have to think about pace, how quickly we're going to go through those power standards. Kind of tied with all of that is feedback, making sure that the students are getting it and not just plowing forward because we've got to cover it in a short amount of time. We want to make sure we're constantly checking in with our students to know, did they get it? And if not, okay, we're going to have to slow down and make sure they get it. If it's a power standard, if it's that important that we make sure we're putting it at a higher level than maybe some other content, we want to make sure that our kids are grasping it before we move on. So these 3 concepts have been really important for us as we've moved through the first 5 weeks or so of the school year. We allowed for our teachers a huge opportunity this summer that I was really thrilled to be able to provide for them. We gave literally every teacher a chance to do summer curriculum work, and we had nearly 150 teachers spend up to 8 hours working in teams to examine their curriculum and talk about those 3 circles that I just showed on the previous slide. What was nice about the work, and I think is almost a byproduct, was that all the groups worked on site to complete the curriculum work. And we know in hearing from our teacher leaders, there was a great reluctance for some teachers to even go back in the building. It had been so long, and that safety part and some of the fears they may have had, this allowed them a chance to kind of come in under their own terms and do some of the work. So the work was done here, and then each group was tasked with creating a deliverable that was presented to a district or a building administrator. So we had a tremendous number of teachers really dig into their curriculum before they even thought about starting the school year and really thought about that prioritization of standards. Another key part of our summer work and leading up to the school year was professional development. We decided early on in the process, and this goes back to when we had our subcommittees over the summer, we kept talking about what would be our needs in terms of professional development. What do we want to make sure all teachers know before they get back into the school year? And we settled on really 3 topics: social emotional learning, which was really the idea of considering our students' basic social emotional needs before we even start talking about the academic needs. We had to make sure they were prepared to be back at school. For many, there's been a lot that has gone on between March and September. So SEL was an important topic that we wanted all teachers to be thinking about before they started thinking about the academics. We talked about assessment and feedback. As I mentioned before, it's that being able to check in to make sure that our kids are getting what we're teaching, because sometimes they're not sitting in front of us. And so how do you leverage the digital tools that we have at our fingertips to do those quick checks, those formative assessments, to make sure that our kids are grasping content and that we can move on to those next topics. And then in the center was really the flagship of the PD. It was a fairly lengthy instructional design workshop that worked with teachers in exploring different ways that they could blend learning, kind of that idea of teaching kids that are in front, kids that are at home, teaching kids that you may never see at all. We really wanted to give them strategies, design options, tools to make that process easier. So we essentially required that every teacher had to complete these 3 workshops before the school year started. Many, a large percentage of them did it over the summer to get ahead of the game, get in-service credit. Some chose to do it during our first 3 superintendent's conference days, but all of them did complete it prior to the start of the school year, and allowed all of us to be on equal footing, have a common vocabulary as we started the school year. And as a result, what we're seeing is that there's a lot of different ways to adapt teaching through the pandemic. You've seen these pictures on our Facebook and Twitter site. These are ones that Brian has taken. We're really proud of how our teachers are adjusting to this new normal. They've figured out ways, and it may be different for the same teacher may teach differently from day to day. They're taking risks. They're stepping out on the ledge. They're going outside of their comfort zone to try these things out, and our students are greatly benefiting from it. It's really that idea of doing it the way I've always done it. It's not really an option anymore. We have to be inventive. And what we found is the teachers are taking the risk because the kids are being so patient and walking alongside them. They're helping them in a lot of cases. Here, let me show you a new way to do this. And the kids will step up and show it. So it's been really awesome to watch all the different ways that we're exploring this idea of new learning. As Jim mentioned, we do have a structure to support everything that we just talked about, and that's through our professional learning communities, our PLCs. And you mentioned Michael threw a lot of acronyms before. I'm going to acronym the heck out of you guys in just a minute here. We have at the highest level, I guess if you think about all the levels, we're calling them PLCs, but at the highest level of PLCs is our district learning team, our DLT. And that is a group made up of teacher leaders. We have roughly 35 teacher leader positions, plus our instructional administrators. And they essentially form the support for all these PLCs. We talk about how we structure the meetings, the type of questions that we ask in our building and department meetings. And so the work that gets done there flows down to the building learning teams, our BLTs. And we have a BLT at our high school, our middle school, and at K-5 level. And those BLTs are made up of the teacher leaders for those building levels, as well as the instructional administrators. They're at this level is where you start to see those SMART objectives that Dr. Franchini mentioned. They create every year objectives that support the district goals. And then they flow down to what we call our ALTs, our academic learning teams. And those are really our department and grade level teams. At that level, they're forming the action steps. So they figure out what steps we need to take to meet the SMART objectives, which will in turn meet the district goals. So it flows up. So this was a graphic that we used last year to really lay out this new structure that we were trying to support. But in thinking about this year, I presented this to DLT at our October meeting. This is really what we're looking at instead. It's not a top-down thing. We have instead really an ongoing cycle. So at the first Wednesday of every month, we have our DLT meet together. And then the following Wednesday, our BLTs meet. And then the following Monday, our ALTs meet. And it allows us to form a cycle where we can gather feedback from the BLT and the ALT level to drive what we're going to do at DLT the following month. So it's really trying to get away from this being a district push of here's what you need to know, go do it. Instead, here's what we're thinking. Let's roll it out in your buildings. Let's roll it out to your grade level departments, and then give us feedback so that we can know where we have to go next. This feedback process has been really important this year because what I personally, and I'm sure Jim would say the same, what we thought we'd be able to do has had to change because of the feedback we're getting at the BLT and ALT level. And we've been very open to saying, okay, we're going to need to shift. As a result, this year is really all about flexibility. What we thought we were going to do and versus what we've actually done in the first 3 months is very different. We went into this summer saying, you know what we're going to do? In July, we're going to bring a guest speaker in who's got a lot of experience with PLCs. We're still kind of in our infancy, so we want to get them to continue to support our work in the PLC. And then we got to the week before we were going to realized, oh my gosh, we have these 3 learning models that we have to talk about. We can't do this PLC work. We have to focus on how we're going to even reopen school in a month. So we pivoted and we used our time in the summer to do that kind of work. As the school year started, literally the first day of school with students, we had a DLT meeting. And I'm sitting in the meeting and I'm saying, okay, it's time to start building those objectives and action steps. And they're all like, I can't even imagine doing that. I just got through my first day of school with kids. So we, again, pushed the pause button on that and said, okay, we'll pivot again. Let's focus on what we need. What will make us successful at the building and classroom level? And then we'll work back towards those goals, objectives, and action steps. So that cycle of DLT, BLT, ALT has really helped us get the feedback we need to be successful. What we did pivot to this summer, I think ended up being a very effective DLT process. We had a 2-day summer workshop. The first day was done virtually. And the second day was done in person. You can see a picture there that we actually all met in a bus garage and had roughly 50 people spread out throughout the bus garage in different bays. And we did a deep dive into the 3 reopening models. Each model was given a minimum of an hour of examination to talk about, if we were in this model, what would classroom norms and expectations be? What would our first 4 days look like? What would we need in terms of professional development? And they really explored each model under those lenses so that they had some idea of what they could then bring back to their own teams when they led their own meetings at the beginning of the school year. We also talked about identifying curriculum gaps and how we could solve that. We know we had an incomplete year, to say the least, last March through June. And so there's gaps that existed. So we allowed those teachers to work together. 2nd grade met with 3rd grade. Our English department got to meet to talk about where the gaps would exist from grade level to grade level. So they really were able to identify the gaps and talk about how they can make up for the things that were missed by not having that complete school year towards the end of last year. They also used that time to plan for the ALT meetings. We wanted everyone to walk out of there knowing what discussion they would have to have with their departments to start the school year. So everyone walked out of there with an agenda ready to go to kick off the year. And since that time, we've had now 2 monthly DLT meetings. And as I mentioned, we've really had to pivot over what we thought we were going to be doing. We focused a lot on reflecting on what the opening weeks of school look like. We've shifted, as Dr. Franchini said, we've shifted away from the hard discussion about measurable SMART objectives and action steps into a more simple question of what are we looking to accomplish this year? And then ultimately, how are we going to measure that? And I said the other day, you could have someone say, I just want to survive. That's okay. If that's your personal target, that's okay. But at some point, I want to say, how do you measure? How do you know you survived? What are you going to go back and look at to say, okay, I was able to survive because my kids were able to do X, Y, and Z. So we'll work back to that conversation. We're just not there yet mentally to have it. Again, we talk a lot of prioritization. We're going to keep that conversation going in our DLT meetings and then eventually drive about how do we measure if our students are successful. And then what do we do if they're not? That gets into that intervention piece that we've been talking about with our RTI process. And then lastly, what are our instructional needs? How can we continue to support the teachers in the classroom to ensure our students are successful? What's nice about those questions that I just asked on the previous slide is they really connect nicely to what are the 4 core questions of the PLC. I showed this last year in the presentation. I want to bring them up again. These 4 questions are what really drive the work that happens in those collaborative teams. It's what do we expect our students to learn? That's that prioritization. How will we know when we learned it? Okay, how are we going to measure student success? And if they don't get it, how will they respond? How will we respond to make sure that they do get it? And that's really that intervention part. We also have the question of how will we respond when they already know it? That's the next level, the going deeper. And I think with the models that we're in and the access to technology, we're having kids be more creative with digital tools than we've ever thought possible before because we're taking risks. We're saying to students, make a video. You guys know how to do that. Let's show me that you know it. So we're seeing kids do some really unique doing unique things to show us ways that they understand the content. I think that's been really fun to watch. So these are the 4 essential questions of a PLC. They're part of our ALT meetings. They're part of our BLT meetings. They're really part of all of our instructional conversations that we're going to continue to have despite everything that's going on, because they're still centered to what we're talking about. We want our teachers to have those conversations every month about, boy, how are you guys dealing with this? I'm really struggling with it. That's an important conversation that needs to exist. The last part of our team, the last thing that we really have been talking a lot about, and I know I mentioned this in the video last month, is data and accountability. We had this as a district goal for our the first few years that we had these goals in place. And this year, as you know, we moved away from it as a district goal and brought in a new 3rd goal. And the reason being that data and accountability really supports all 3 goals. It supports career and college readiness. It supports contributing to the community, and it supports digital efficacy with our students. And so instead, what we want to do is develop a system for teachers to have data as part of their daily culture. And so if you remember from last year, Kristen Card was with me presenting, and she showed our new homegrown system called AP Inquiry. This is a homegrown data dashboard tool that we've been using now for a little over a year, pretty much at the administrative level. And our goal has been to now push this down to the teacher level so that the teachers can have access to the dashboards when they're having those conversations in their PLCs about what's working, what's not working, how are students doing, are they getting it, are they not getting it? We want to have all this data at their fingertips. Funny thing happened in our way of rolling this out. We don't have data right now. There was no state assessments. There were no Regents assessments. We had very limited quarterly data from the end of last school year. We didn't do our normal end of year screeners. All of these things that we usually use to drive the start of the school year, we don't have. So we are starting to ramp up now that we have some first quarter data, and we will be rolling this system out to our teacher leaders in the next few weeks. So we're really excited. This has been an initiative that's still been kind of rolling on behind the scenes. We're just been waiting for stuff to put in it. So we'll be able to now have this at the fingertips of our teachers. So I'm going to just close with a couple slides that I actually stole from a presentation that I used in the introduction to one of those summer workshops that I mentioned earlier. And it's a message that we've been giving our teachers. This is a very unusual time when we're talking about teaching and learning. And I think when we talk about the fall and coming back to school and what that meant, we really have this choice, right? We can choose to think about what we lost, what we don't have that we're used to having, and what really we can't do in our current situation, or we can instead embrace what we can be and what we might be able to do that we've never done before. We're seeing things happen in the classroom that have never been done, never existed, never thought we could do. So we could choose to embrace that, or we can be sad about the things that we've lost. This is also an opportunity. I think it's a great opportunity to take those risks, to try new things, go out on a limb. This is the time to fail. And quite honestly, it's okay to fail, because no one has the perfect solution to make this the way that it has always been. We're all trying new things. So take the risk, explore in a different way, create in a different way, learn in a different way is the message we're trying to tell our teachers. And I left them with really kind of 6 takeaways. Practice humility. All right. It's hard for teachers to not be the experts. It's hard for them to not always have the correct answer. They're going to have to be vulnerable and say, you know what, I don't know. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to make this work. And that's okay. So hard for teachers to do, because we don't want to show that weakness, but it's okay to show that humility. It's okay to struggle. We've seen a lot of new experiences in our classrooms over the first 5 weeks. And I think in the feedback that we've been getting, teachers are getting comfortable with that. Geez, I can't figure it out, guys, help me. And the students will step up and show it. And it's been okay. We're going to all have challenges. We're all going to have struggles. And this is a good way to show the students how you overcome those challenges and struggles. I think many would say this feels like the first year of teaching all over again. Perfection cannot be an expectation. And again, hard for teachers to come to grips with the fact that not everything's going to be perfect in their room. There's way too many unknowns on a day-to-day basis, and there's going to be barriers thrown their way. Lessons are going to flop. Activities are going to take a lot longer than we expected, and projects are going to require revision. It's to be expected. Perfection is not. I mentioned feedback, but there's really two kinds of feedback. There's the feedback on, are my students understanding what I'm teaching? But there's also the feedback on, how am I doing as a teacher? And we want to make sure that they're checking in with their students and with their parents to make sure they're getting that feedback. It's an important part of these models that we're in, is knowing what's working and what's not working. So we're encouraging that frequent feedback, both to help academically, but also to help instructionally. And then lastly, focusing on what's important. All right, at the end of the day, we don't have what we're used to. And so you have to really think about, what are my objectives of this day? What is the most important part of this lesson that I'm teaching? There might be things that I've done in the past that I'm really good at and I love to do, and my kids have already, it may not work this year. It may not be an option this year. So focus on what you're really trying to accomplish when you're teaching. And then finally, think about your students first. Again, as I just said, we gravitate towards the things that we know and the things that we're comfortable with. And sometimes that may not always be the best for the students. So now's the time to question really whether what we're doing in the classroom still makes sense, given the model, given the fact that maybe only half of my students are sitting with me and the other half are at home. So these are really important takeaways for teaching and learning. And they're going to be ongoing lessons for all of us as we keep moving forward with this. I could say confidently, in talking to administrators in each of the building, talking to teachers in each of the building, what we're doing is working. Is it as good as it's always been? Hard to say. Is it perfect? No, it is working. We know our students are learning, their students are coming prepared to learn, and our students are ready to learn. So I think that's the important thing. We have them back in the buildings and we are moving forward. Certainly not at the pace that I think we thought we would be on at this point last year, but we are moving forward. And that is it. Any questions?
I have a comment. Is just a big thank you for being flexible with this teachers as they feel, like you said at the beginning, like the anxiety of this returning to school in our new normal. But the fact that you responded to that, but you kept them focused on, you know, what's the best thing for our students is fantastic. So we appreciate that. Thank you.
Can I ask, I obviously, and in my personal experience, the majority of the teachers have really risen to the occasion on this, but can you touch on maybe just one of the things you said you've had to pivot a couple of times, or maybe one of the challenges that you've come up against? I know at the middle school and the high school level, the synchronous learning can be difficult. We've got students that are tapping in virtually, and you have students that are in the classroom, and there are some challenges there. What are some of the ideas for overcoming those challenges?
Well, I think it's somewhat of we've let this to be a little bit of a teacher's choice about how they approach the idea of dealing with different populations, kids with you and kids at home. And I think we're starting to see best practices emerge. And so what I have been suggesting to the principals, and I know some have already started these conversations, is have opportunities for teachers to share ideas, share those best practices. They're taking times at their ALT meetings, they're taking times at their faculty meetings to really sit down and talk about what's working and what's not working. There is not one right answer for how to deal with synchronous instruction with populations in two places, but there are a lot of different ways that you can go about it. And I think teachers are probably in the better position to say, hey, this is what really worked for me. I know for me as a teacher, what I would have done, and what I would have done is not necessarily being practiced by every classroom in the district, and that's okay. Everyone has a different comfort level with how they would handle that situation.
Is there any interdistrict sharing of experiences?
No, there isn't right now, Doug, but we did talk about, I would love to, at the very least, get our 6-12 populations together if there was a way to coordinate meeting times. It's a little bit of a challenge because of the schedules don't always align. And we don't have that built-in time. We don't have like a conference day or anything to have them do that with. But we talked about some kind of an ed camp style meeting where they could get together and based on thematic classrooms and all talk about what they're doing with that. I'd love to figure out a way, and we're still working through that with the building principals.
Does BOCES offer any opportunity for?
They have not that I've seen. I think, Jim, they typically do a conference day sometime in November for this purpose, and I don't think they're doing it this year from what I understand.
Okay, thank you.
I don't think they are, because everyone moved their conference days up like we did.
Yeah, so no one has the November day now.
I know too, for the teachers, as far as teaching the hybrid students and digitalizing assignments, and for the virtual teachers at the elementary level having to digitalize the assignments, is there time or support built in for those teachers to help with that? I mean, it's not like a teacher's job was ever not 24/7, but there literally are no more hours in the day. So I'm wondering, like, what support structure we have in place for the teachers. You know, I'm worried about burnout. It's such a high pressure situation, and everyone is like literally on the brink of losing their mind anyway. So I'm a little concerned about our teachers that they may be being pushed beyond what is reasonable.
Yeah, I think the time that they spent this summer, and again, a lot of them took advantage of that, really set them up nicely for the first, 4 to 8 weeks. And they're now kind of hitting the end of that work. And they're saying, okay, now I've got this next big chunk of time to prepare for. How do I get that? And I think time is a concept that we have been talking a lot about. It actually came up at an assistant superintendent's meeting I attended on Friday virtually, that the question was, how do you find the time? Because it's the same schedule we've always been doing. So certainly during a teacher's prep time, they can do that. And we have the supports. They can call on Melissa Weatherwax to say, hey, can you work with me to show me how I can use this tool in my classroom? But time is going to be the issue. We just, we don't have it built into our day to do it. And I think we need to be creative. We've been kind of exploring some ideas of how we might be able to find that time. Everything comes at some level of a cost, whether it's actually money cost or the cost of giving up something else. And so I think it's a challenge, but we've heard from the teachers that's by far their biggest need right now, is just having time so they can feel like they're confident about what's coming next and not living that day to day as you're kind of imagining, which would lead to that burnout. Like, how am I going to get through tomorrow? How am I going to get through tomorrow? They want to be planned ahead. And I think they got that a little bit in the summer, but now it's starting to catch up with them.
I think I just want to say, just kind of add on to what Jesse said a little bit, is what you're talking about, how in your position, the SMART objectives are important, and you're letting the teaching and the staff know that these are still really important goals. But I think the fact that you're still supporting them and letting them know that we're not expecting perfection, you're giving them that understanding and that leeway to not be perfect, I think probably goes a long way in reassuring the entire district that, we're all in this together. And, as long as we are moving forward, which we are, then we're still a step ahead. I just think that the fact that they know they're supported, and you've made that clear, and your willingness to slow down and say, hey, these are still really important objectives, but let's get through this together, it's par for Averill Park. So it's good stuff.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we still plan, as we've done in the past, to follow up the larger DLT with specific building level presentations for you. The first year we did each building, and then middle school, high school. Last year we moved to a model of elementary, middle, high school. So coming to a future meeting, you'll have a BLT presentation from the elementary, one from the middle school, and then one from the high school.
Great. Thank you.
Sounds good. All right. Thank you very much. All really good information. Okay, on to our policy review. And I think we can start with 5151.
So Kim has been given the opportunity to lead the policy review. So from the district point of view, I know something she's been dying to do, and
Yes.
I would like to give her this opportunity. You can say thank you later, Kim. She's going to do the policy review component.
Okay, so let me see if I can let me share. There we go. Okay, so just hopefully you've all had a chance to review these policies. I know homeless children and student health services, we had intended to talk about in September, but with the capital project, we decided to table them to this meeting. So just a little background. Over the summer, NISBA had sent a series of recommended policy updates, and several of them were related to the pandemic. So our attorney had reviewed, these and went through them all and basically said that we had existing policies to cover many of the ones they had recommended, but he suggested that we wanted to update the homeless children policy and regulation and also the student health services. So we can start with homeless children. This was actually adopted last year. So these are just small tweaks to the policy that was recently updated. So I guess if you've all had a chance to read through them, if you have any questions, I can do my best to try to address any questions that you may have regarding 5151 and 5151R.
I'll start.
Okay.
If no one has anything on 5151, it was pretty clear what the minor changes were from when we adopted it. But I just had at least one comment on the 5151R.
Okay.
On page 3. There was a note of an optional second sentence.
I have that same question, Ann.
That I was, you and me, Jesse. I was okay with that being in there. I don't know if that was your take on that as well. But I was okay adding that parental rights under the FERPA pertaining to student records extend to a person acting as a parent in the absence of a parent guardian. District grants unaccompanied youth under age 18 the rights under FERPA for eligible students and parents' guardians. I just have okay next to that as being an optional notation in the regulation. And that's all I had.
Yes, I agree with that. I'm okay with it being in. I just wanted to confirm that that's what our standard practice is. And if there's a reason not to exclude it, if that could be explained, or not to include it, could be explained, but if everyone is okay with it being in there.
I thought I saw it as part of the policy itself, as a definition in part of the policy. I reviewed it long ago and made the notes. I reviewed it for our last meeting, so I'm not sure, but I think my assessment was based on a definition somewhere along the way that I read.
Well, so the way that I understood it is that it goes with what's immediately above, right? So if we are saying that we're going to accept signatures, in the absence, that we're going to accept a signature from the unaccompanied youth, then the rights under the FERPA would follow. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like if they get the one, they get the other.
Mm-hmm.
Or how I read it.
And just to clarify, I did run this past the attorney, Jesse, when you had originally asked, and he did clarify that, an unaccompanied youth is defined as a homeless child or youth that's not in the physical custody of a parent or guardian. And then what this allows is that child to be able to get any records they may need. It may become particularly important as they're getting towards college age because they may need records that have to go to colleges on their behalf. So it's really giving them the right in the absence of a parent or guardian to be able to act on their own behalf.
Good. Thank you.
Mhm.
I guess the only thing I'd say to that one and it's more just a question of the group as a whole. I mean, I understand the age of 18 and that scenario is a very good one. So I appreciate it, Kim, because I was wondering kind of what we'd need, but is there a limit to how young the student can be to be looking to do that? Or looking to, if the district grants rights, I mean, if the individual is 9 or 10, is that the same as the person being, 15, 16, 17? And I just kind of pose that to the group.
I think there would be a guardian in that case when they were so young, I would imagine. I don't know all the ins and outs of FERPA, but I can't imagine that there wouldn't be an assigned guardian. But I don't know.
Right.
I would agree with you. It just seems like in the absence of parent guardian, it's like at the end of that first sentence, it's one of those things where my assumption is that they are still getting assistance from the state until they reach, adult age, I guess 18. But I don't think any of us have the answer. I just figured I'd just put it out there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Who oversees the program? We have a designated individual
Yes, it falls under Kate Dorgan's responsibilities.
under,
And she also did review this policy along with the attorney.
does she review each of the applications, or at least the cases to address Chris's concerns? Would she review that?
Yeah, I mean, I know she does the review to determine if they meet the McKinney-Vento, qualifications. To address your question, our attorney did write this definition of unaccompanied youth can be used to describe youth who are residing with a caregiver who is not a parent or guardian, as well as youth who are living without the care of an adult. So, I mean, I could go back to them and our attorney and get some clarification. The way I read this, there doesn't seem to be an age,
Right.
assigned. It just defines under 18. I guess I don't know, why a younger child would need access to records, but, I guess you never know what situation could come up.
I think it
There's
really, I think the age of 18 is specified. I mean, this is just what I think. It's probably under the FERPA rules that, there's different rules for 18 and over. So they delineate that for under 18.
Right. Once a child does reach 18, rights under FERPA do transfer to the student.
Right. So I'm thinking the number 18 is not there for us to determine whether or not a youth would be unaccompanied, whether they're 9 or 10, or I think it's just because the FERPA, we're talking about FERPA here, and FERPA changes at 18. That's how I read it.
Right. That makes sense.
If that helps. Maybe it just makes it worse.
No.
I think the gray area is really between the ages of 15 and 18, where you see the highest instance of children filing for emancipation so that they can care for themselves, which does happen. It doesn't happen frequently, but I think it does happen. And where there would be no actual legal adult present for in the care of. So no foster parent, no, guardianship, no law guardian of that regard.
Do we have other concerns about that language? Or is everyone sort of okay with it, given that it's been by the lawyer and we're trying to interpret it a little bit maybe differently than the law states, because we're not all lawyers, but
I'm okay with it.
yeah. Okay.
If nobody has any objections, I would make a motion to dispense with the second reading and adopt this one.
So you're making a motion, Megan is making a motion to adopt policy 5151 along with the regulation.
Yes.
Okay, do we have a second? Thank you, Chris. Is there further discussion on this? Okay, hearing none, I will call it to a vote. All those in favor of adoption?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Okay, passed unanimously. Thank you. Get that one off our plate. All right. You want to take a introduction to 5420, Kim?
Sure. So 5420, student health services, same thing. Our attorney said that we definitely needed to update student health services. The one that we have currently is dated 2009. So this one is really an overhaul of the very dated policy. And it does include, it brings us up to date with some of the changes to immunization requirements, and also it addresses some communicable diseases procedures. This again was reviewed by the attorney, by Kate, who oversees nursing, and also by Val and Rebecca, our directors of nursing. So everyone took a look at it. I know, Jesse, I know you had a couple questions, and I think I have the answers for you.
Yeah, because there was a couple options in terms of, do we stock epinephrine auto ejectors or not? And there was just a couple things that kind of were questions in my mind, and I want to follow the protocol, make sure our policy follows the protocol we already have in place, because I'm sure we're doing things thoroughly.
Yep.
It's as if you're in my brain when you ask these questions. It's so weird.
So go ahead, Kim, and make those clarifications.
Okay, so your question was on the EpiPens.
Yep, emergency care. It was like the paragraph under the first note under emergency care.
Okay.
The optional language.
Schools will also provide emergency care for students in accidental or unexpected medical situation. The optional. So I did clarify with Val again today, just to make sure I understood it. So we do have some EpiPens for non-patient specific use. And she said in those situations, the registered nurse would be the only person that could administer that to a child that does not have a prescription for it. So a child gets stung by a bee, we don't know they have an allergy, and now we're going to use the EpiPen. The nurses would be the ones that would do that for non-patient specific use. And then she said the children that do have an EpiPen, have an order for one, those could be administered by the nurse, the athletic trainer, and any trained staff member. So if you have a known allergy and you need it, anyone who has proper training can administer that. So that's how she clarified that for me. So I guess, I guess we would want the non-patient language in that regard, in that case.
For me,
Yes.
I have a note next to that. And this goes back to a while ago when we first started talking about our policies, and that changing the language slightly to give us the flexibility. In this case, under the optional language, I wonder if we can say the district may stock epinephrine and the district may insure. It gives us that option without saying will. I don't know if that, I said quote unquote may, or no, we can't do that.
So
it was a suggestion.
Yeah, and I would think the district may stock the auto injectors for non-patient specific use, but I think I would advocate we leave the will ensure that the designated staff are properly trained. And I read the district will ensure the designated staff are properly trained, for people to know, like, designated staff for the non-patients is just the nurse, and the designated staff for the known patients can be those other trained staff members.
Could we say the district will ensure that only designated staff? No.
I think it's implied it's only.
In most cases, I would agree with the may, but I think when it comes to emergency care, I don't think that
that part I think should stay will. The emergency care should still be will. I'm talking about the optional language.
Right, but I think I don't know that we would want to leave any ambiguity on the we will or will not. I don't think may, when it comes to medical care. I think in most cases it definitely would be okay, but I think when it comes to medical care, I don't think that it would be appropriate. That's just my personal opinion.
But what if we have it in stock, but we don't have the nurse to administer it?
Do we have teachers or other people other than the school nurses who are like CPR trained and emergency care trained? Like in my office, I'm AED trained. I'm CPR trained and Heimlich maneuver trained. Do we have other adults in the building who are trained other than the school nurses?
Yeah, the coaches are definitely trained.
Yeah, and
PE teacher,
athletic trainer.
Athletic trainer in the high
Kim
school.
said that only, in this
Right.
case, only the registered nurses were allowed to do it.
And this is, I can read to you, Val, because I asked Val to clarify this for me actually tonight or this afternoon. She says the Averill Park School District nurses have orders from Dr. Silverman to give an EpiPen to someone who does not have an order for it and has an anaphylactic response to an unknown allergy. Only an Averill Park School District registered nurse may administer an EpiPen to someone who does not have an order. So I guess.
Right. So it only applies in the instance where the person does not have
right.
like
in that emergency situation, yes.
Well, so in that case, does it make sense the district will ensure? I mean, I guess that's redundant. Do we want to clarify that that's who can do it and that they are properly trained? Like this will be carried out by
I would advocate not only, Samantha, only because in the case where they're talking about ones that is already prescribed the EpiPen, it can be other people. It's the ones who are not. So but I see what you're saying. We could be clear in this instance, but does that affect the other people who already have the prescription that other adults can, administer the EpiPen?
Are we covered by leaving out the optional language? Because that would be considered emergency care for students in an accidental or unexpected medical situation. If they're having this, anaphylactic shock, is that what you said?
Yes.
This allergic reaction and they don't have a prescription for an epinephrine, then that would be considered an unexpected medical situation. And we've said we'll provide emergency care for students in that case. I wonder if we're covered just with that and we can take the optional language out because it's just causing confusion.
I
Oh,
agree.
that's a good.
Administration of an EpiPen, you have to be able to evaluate the situation and know that it requires the use of it. And we're just getting into a murky situation if we include the optional language. Let's just keep it out.
I'm good with that.
Along those lines, and that's fine if we leave it out, but along those lines, as far as administering emergency care, are the teachers and such protected under the Good Samaritan statute, like you would be if you're on an airplane or if I'm in my office or something along those lines? So maybe because I can see confused faces. So there's a Good Samaritan statute that protects an average person. So say I'm, in a grocery store and somebody collapses in front of me and I administer CPR. From a liability standpoint, I'm protected. CPR can, in some cases, you can break a rib if you're doing it right. So if I were to break that person's rib in the process of saving their life, then the Good Samaritan statute protects me against liability claims. Are we protected along those same lines?
I wouldn't see why we wouldn't be.
Michael, do you know that? Would that fall under the district's insurance? I mean,
I would imagine we are. We can double check with Jeff, but I think the same protections that you'd have outside of the workplace exist within it, I believe.
That seems to be logical. Right,
because my point is, if somebody who is not an RN administers an EpiPen, would they be protected against, or would the district?
Not an RN though, would you just happen to have an EpiPen on you?
I have mine. I carry mine.
But would you use it on someone else?
Only if I absolutely had to, but no, I wouldn't just be like, here. You don't trust me. If you see anaphylactic shock, you know what you're looking at. You see a person, turning blue and swelling profusely at the neck, you don't mistake it. If you're emergency services trained, then you don't really miss it. And if that person didn't have one and I had one, I might in that scenario.
Well, I think for purposes of the policy discussion that we're talking about,
yeah,
if we take out as Peter put it, the murky language of the optional language, we're still covered by saying we'll provide emergency care.
Right. So we're not going to include the optional language is what I'm hearing.
That's what I think. And
is everyone in agreement to that?
Yeah, I'm okay leaving out the optional language if it.
Okay. Chris, I saw your thumbs up. You're good. I'm assuming Ann is good.
I'm good.
Just one other
Doug's
question
good.
on the emergency care. Is there a reason that we're not including things like Heimlich maneuver or CPR or anything like that in relation? I mean, we're touching on allergic reaction, and then we touch on, I'm thinking Narcan, like an overdose, but then I gotta scroll down on my screen over here. But
yeah,
then
Narcan is in there.
Right, but we're not talking about like AED or CPR or Heimlich maneuver or any other type of emergency related care. We're only addressing those two isolated incidents. Should we be? Am I overthinking it?
I think you are.
Okay.
And I think that
listing specific things and someone administers something that's not in the list, then you have a problem. If you just leave it general, then I think we're in good shape.
Yeah, I think
the broader spectrum.
yeah,
Okay.
I think the general language covers those things that you mentioned, Megan.
Gotcha. Okay, I'm just checking.
Yeah, no, it's all good. Okay. So Kim, we lost your shared screen. Well, I did.
I still have it.
Oh, I just have Kim's face.
Okay. All right, I can stop and start again, see if that will.
Yeah, no, if it's just me, just keep going. The next one I had was the paragraph under it, because we need to choose trained volunteers or the school nurse. And, we just need to know what we have in our building to appropriately reflect what we have.
So I checked in with Val, and from what she explained to me, we have staff that has volunteered, but it doesn't sound like they've gone through the training yet. So she suggested we may want to keep trained volunteers in the event, in the hopes that, we will be able to get people trained, in this type of situation. So, and I don't know what the plan is to do that. Hopefully it's something that we would work on soon, so people would be prepared. God forbid we ever had an emergency like this.
Right. So the recommendation is leave the and/or.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Good.
That was also mine, Jesse.
Yeah. And then I think on page 3, the top of page 3, we need what the specific title is. Is that the directors? I mean, I know we have co-directors of nursing, but I don't know if that's their official title.
No, Val said just take that out. So it would be on a chart developed by the school nurse. So
okay, so just leave it the school nurse.
Yeah, and we'll take out.
Okay.
Kim, can you scroll up?
Yep. Sorry about that. Yeah, so this one here, Peter. We're just going to put period school nurse.
Okay.
And then Jesse, I think you had a question about the albuterol.
Right, and what form we currently stock, so we can just reflect on what our current practices are.
Let me get to that. Let me look at my notes here. I don't think we actually do, so we would take that out.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, I just have a no written by it, so I don't believe we. Just when I thought Val addressed that for me. She said, we do not have standing orders, nor does Dr. Silverman support stocking albuterol. So,
okay. So that whole paragraph is strict. We don't need to include.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Were there any other questions on 5420?
Jesse covered them all.
Yeah, the regulation also has mirrored language in terms of on page 6, they talk about the Ephren. So I think that's fine. And the albuterol, so we would have to take that out on page 6. But I also have circled on page 2 and on top of page 3, it says the building principal may permit students without adequate documentation to attend school. This is must be about immunizations. Is that the correct title of the person who is able to make that call?
You said you're on page 2.
Yeah, so the bottom of page 2 of the regulation, the second paragraph from the bottom starts with the building principal may permit students.
Yeah, I don't,
This is related to the vaccination schedule and the records at the bottom on the regulation where it says the building principal may permit students without adequate documentation to attend school up to 14 calendar days while the parent/guardian furnishes that one.
Yes,
Yeah.
that one. So it's just, is that the right title for the person who is in charge of that? That's all.
yeah, Jim, do you know the answer to that?
I think so. I think, yeah.
That's fine if it is. I just flagged it as like, I wasn't sure. Because I know last year when they started enforcing the more rigorous immunization schedule, Jim, you had answered a lot of questions. So
Yeah.
that's why I wasn't sure whether it was the building principal or you.
You got me thinking about that now. When I first read it, I believe the wording is the building principal in most cases. What we've done is we've made it the superintendent or the district office just so we had consistency among the 5 buildings. That was more of an internal decision because it just didn't seem right. But if I'm going back my memory now, the actual way like the wording is that it's the building principal in most cases.
Okay. So it's good the way it is. That's all. I just
building principal, but it's really coming. We send them. We decide establishing more consistent or uniform protocol, so that we're getting the same people involved each time. So it's director of nursing, school physician, superintendent. They, especially with the situation we had last year when the law changed, it just didn't seem like a local building decision. Would make sense that, you know, West Sand Lake could grant an immunization when Miller Hill could say no. Or better example, West Sand Lake could say yes and Algonquin could say no. Same family, same kids. It just didn't make sense. So we kind of internally adopted it as a superintendent. But I think in the way it's worded is the building principal, like in terms of like the statute or however. I remember talking to this with Jeff.
Yeah.
But we were fine doing it the way we were doing it for consistency's sake. It was kind of like a higher level.
Right. Okay. Thanks. I just wanted to make sure it was correct.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess, and then moving on to page 6, we need to strike the use of albuterol paragraphs that are related to that.
And the epinephrine too, right? At the top.
I thought.
Right, because if we're not stocking the EpiPens and we're not. So
but
wait,
we
are stocking them, but we're not telling people that we stock them?
We're stocking EpiPens, but not the albuterol.
Correct.
Right, we're not. The albuterol, no, we're not stocking. But yeah, we are stocking the EpiPens, and this actually does clarify a little bit.
Oh yeah, yeah, it does. Yep. Yeah. So that's good. I apologize. I'm sorry. Yep, that's fine. Just take out the albuterol.
We'll take out the albuterol section here.
Mm-hmm. So it would go right to C.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Student medical exams.
From the note down to C would be stricken.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So then the last, student medical exams.
And that's all the questions I had. The other one would have been if we didn't do the naloxone for the opioid overdose, which we have, so we leave that in there too. So, okay. I just had a note next to it. If we don't do this, we should take it out, but we do, so that's good.
Anything else on the regulation?
Nope, that was it. I just wanted to make sure we had consistency with the policy, so. Do we want to look at that one again with the changes board?
I I actually am generally all for moving forward, but we've made a lot of changes to this one. So if we could just take one last peek at it in the revised format, because honestly, we've scratched and moved some things around, and I just want to read it in its final version. That's just my opinion.
No, I agree. I think it needs to be reviewed by the medical professionals.
Right. So we'll see that one again.
Yep. Good.
I'll update it and we can get it back out for review.
Perfect. Thank you. So moving on to policy 1500, the public use of school facilities.
Okay. So this was a recommendation from Jeff Honeywell. That's correct, right, Jim? He wanted us to add some indemnification language to this policy. And then in reviewing it, we realized that we actually have an electronic format now for requesting, for the public to request the use of our facilities. So there were some forms reference that we no longer really use because people have migrated to this online system for requesting. So here on the first page, the language in yellow is what Jeff recommended we include, in this policy.
Just to follow up with that, it came through when we were opening up the campus again for groups to use post-COVID. And we were concerned about whether or not we needed to add a COVID waiver, that type of stuff. And I know some groups do that already. It was Jeff's opinion that we didn't need to, nor do we want to. It was just going to be one more thing we had to track and added more responsibility to us. Then he said, let me take a look at the policy. And he came back and he said, you're fine. Don't start excluding groups or don't hold up groups that have processes or applications in process. He said, but as I read this, you probably should have state explicitly basically the line he entered. So it's really just making more clear what we're doing. It's not really in addition to, it's just making it crystal clear what the policy states or protects us from.
And then adding that language to the online form.
Yeah, we moved to that as Kim alluded to. Monica, who works in Mark's office, we moved to that. It's all blending a year or two now. And as kind of a pilot, worked out really well. So we've continued with that. And it's just, it's more 2020-ish. It's more online and has made the system much more efficient. And we used to never went back and fix the policy. So.
Right. So when you come down here, Jeff recommended we add this language that the superintendent can develop and modify the necessary forms, and then it references the online location that people can find the form online, and then electronic signatures. Monica did say if there's groups that struggle with the online process, there is a backup process in place to help them. So Monica will work with those groups and, kind of sit with them and enter everything like in their presence, so that.
Question about number 4.
Sure.
We're kind of locking people into having the capability of electronically signing. I mean, why does it have to be electronic? Why can't it be a printed out form and signed physically? We're dealing with people that may not have access to these facilities.
I'd have to get back with Monica. I'm not sure what the system, if there's a, way to.
We just take out electronically, because you can sign it and then you can also electronically sign it. It's still signing it. So if you just take out the word electronically, would that cover us, Peter?
Yeah, I agree. That would have been a solution too.
Yeah.
I think it also depends on what we're calling electronically signed. I mean, if
Right.
you're looking for something that has an official form where you're clicking on a button and it inserts something. I mean, I've seen it before where all you're doing is just changing the font and just putting like
Yeah.
Chris W. Foster and just changing the font to look like a script versus a regular. So, you know, I think it just depends. I mean, if you're not having to use some software to sign, but rather you're just putting in your name and changing the font, I would hope that most folks would do that.
I think what the intention here is to say that an authorized agent of the group is requesting the use.
Right, yeah.
And by doing that, you're signing it. So I think just taking out the word electronically, you're covered both ways.
Agreed.
Okay, that's easy enough. And then, so those were the only changes to the procedures. And then the other piece that's included here, this is again language that Jeff recommended we include in this online portal. Again, it's the indemnification language, which the language currently in the portal is the same language that's used on our existing form. It's just in the portal now. So this would be added to that form, basically.
Okay.
Mhm.
Is there anything in the regulation that would need to be updated if we waive the fees for our community groups that we discussed or that Jim brought up during the superintendent's report?
Well, two things actually. Kim, you may want to have the agent who administers the Utica policy also look at this language from a liability and indemnification standpoint. The carrier may have some suggestions it looks fine to me in my capacity, but they may have some suggestions about particular provisions that they might want groups in, as far as holding harmless and indemnifying and waiver of subrogation and things like that. So you may want to check with the insurance agent for the Utica National policy about the hold harmless language as well. As it relates to charging community groups for use of the facilities, I don't feel right charging local groups to use the facilities that, if they're members of the community. I'm not necessarily opposed to charging groups that are from outside the community though, and I don't know, what everybody's thoughts are on that.
I think that's what Jim and the administration was advocating for, that we waive the fees for the community groups, but leave them in for the outside groups. That was my understanding.
That's right. Only class 2, not class 3.
It's already covered in the waiver of fees, right above the highlighted portion, but I think the outlining of the fees was in the regulation by classes.
Yeah.
I remember seeing it, the actual chart of
Right.
fees somewhere.
Oh, there it is.
Or maybe it was a definition of the classes.
Yeah, the definition of the classes is there under the priority for use
But
section.
it says
because the
fees
class
may
one,
be
class two-
waived for small groups at times when buildings are normally open. So I think that's already covered there under waiver of fees. That way, if we sometime in the future should decide that, yes, you do want to charge a nominal fee to class 2 groups, you don't have to go back and change the policy again. In this case, it says it may be waived if the group provides in-kind donations or equipment, whatever. It says they may be waived by the superintendent. So I feel like that paragraph covers what Jim and Michael and the administration were discussing.
Agree with you, Ann. That's what we would suggest, that instead of amending the policy, we would just say under this section of waiver of fees, the superintendent, will make that call for this temporary period of a test period.
And
It's
it may,
essentially the board's permission to do so, or the board's knowledge to do so, or blessing to do so, because the policy, I guess, technically allows it, right? Wouldn't be done without notifying the board, having the board support doing it, but the policy would allow it. It's sort of like the international field trips. The policy allows you to approve or not approve. So
I support that.
I just wanted to, you got one typo there in the third paragraph of fees for use. The district reserves the right to deny any request that requires the.
okay. Wow, I missed that one.
That is, yeah, I'm a proofreading dork.
I am too, which is why that surprised me.
And I'm surprised you didn't get that one.
You didn't see that either, Jesse?
I did not.
Oh, wow. That's why there's 7 of us.
That's exactly right. Okay, so on this one, to sum up, we're adding the indemnification language as was highlighted in the version you sent us. Do we need a second reading? I know Megan recommended talking to our insurance carrier. However, I mean, this is language from our lawyer, so I don't quite understand that vetting process, but I am not in insurance, so I know Megan is much better versed in that than I am.
So the commercial insurance contract is, yes, it's a legal contract, but the provisions under the duty to defend and the indemnification agreement between the insurance company and the school district sets out certain obligations. So the carrier has a duty to defend as long as we've held up our end of the bargain. If we're changing indemnification language, then we should run it by the carrier to make sure that they don't have any concerns within their underwriting guidelines that violate that language. Now, in this particular case, the language is designed to protect us. I doubt they'll have a problem with it, but under the insuring agreement, we should, for the purposes of the policy being valid, run it by the insurance carrier.
Couldn't that always be done?
It could be done.
What separately. I'm thinking of, in case we change insurers, so couldn't you just add a, I don't know what you call it. What's the term that you throw in there? You just add a change
An
to
endorsement or a rider.
Yeah, a rider. Thank you. Not my field.
You could, and there's no reason why we couldn't revisit it again if we needed to. Like I said, the language is meant to protect us, and I doubt that they would take issue with it. But like I said, under the insuring agreement for a commercial insurance policy, we would want to run it by them.
How hard would that be to do, Jim? Michael, looks like you're shaking your head.
Yeah,
I think that's you.
I don't think it's that hard.
Okay.
It's an email to the broker saying we want to update our indemnification language in our facilities usage agreement. Please run this by the underwriter. And then they should email it over to the underwriter and say, our client would like you to review this and make sure that it doesn't violate the insuring agreement, which they're going to read it. They're going to make their opinion, and they're going to let the broker know. I mean, 24-hour turnaround tops is what it really should be.
Okay, well, tell them you said so.
Let me know if they don't. Silly.
Okay, so we want to have that done prior to approval.
I mean, I wouldn't say it's a hard no if it's not approved, but it's up to the rest of the board what they think.
I think Megan has a point. I'm okay with just deferring the approval to the next reading.
Do you want to do the approval and then we could still check, and if there's a problem, bring it back, or do you want to hold on the approval?
I was gonna say, can we skip the second reading barring any feedback from the insurance company that disagrees with it or whatever? Like, let it go as it is, but if they disagree with the wording, then we'll come back to it. I don't know if you can do that. I mean, do we need to read the legalese again if it's the same and they say it's okay? So could we have an approval pending an approval from the insurance company?
So it goes into effect after the insurance company gives us a thumbs up, is what you're saying. But we
Right.
don't have to wait until our next meeting if they get that by tomorrow, say,
Yeah.
or Wednesday.
I don't know, if the procedure allows that we can approve it with the changes that we've discussed, which is essentially taking out the word electronically on number 4.
Mhm.
Approve it as that, and then say, but if they come out with any changes, they suggest that we would revisit it for a second reading. Can we do that?
How,
I think you'd have to either approve it and then we can check, and if it's not consistent, bring it back, or not approve it, wait till we check and then bring it back a second time. I don't know if you can approve it based on waiting for the answer, because then it's not really approved until we get the answer.
Well, we can always change it too.
Right, that's what I think either approve
If
it,
they
we'll
say they
check.
don't-
If
I mean, we
not,
can
come
approve
back
it
and
now.
reverse it.
Yeah,
either
we can
one.
approve it now, and then if they say, oh, wait, no, we don't like that, then we can say, oh, let's change it, and then approve it then.
Right.
how urgent is it for us to approve this tonight? Is it just easier to wait till next time?
Yes.
Yes.
Michael?
What, it's,
Michael's like, can we please move on?
I'm pretty sure Michael wants to throw a stapler at me right now.
Can we not make this 11 o'clock again? Yeah, let's wait.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to table this one to the next meeting. Do we have to have a motion for that?
no,
Okay.
we just have to say, okay, we're going to have a second reading of it.
Okay, we're gonna have a second reading of it.
That's all. Yep, good. Okay, so on to the policy 6700 purchasing. Anybody have any questions? I have two, one clerical error and one thing, there's an asterisk after something that doesn't, there's no footnote for it. So I'm not sure where that belongs. Oh, and there's one other thing. There's an acronym used that I don't think is defined. At least I could not find where it was defined. So on the first page of the full grade area, so not the one, that would have been 1, 2, page 4. So page 5, in the bullets at the bottom of the page, it says who holds title, and then there's an asterisk. But then there's no follow-up what that asterisk means. So is that in there by mistake, or does that lead?
I'd have to look into it. I have to look at it.
Okay. And then on the last page, there's an acronym LEA, and I cannot seem to find if that's defined anywhere or not.
That's
previous.
just a common term in the federal parlance. It's local educating authority.
Okay, all the other terms are defined though. Can we have that defined the first time, please?
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
I knew it was probably something simple in everybody else's mind. Other questions, comments? You saw that asterisk, Michael, you know where I'm talking
Yeah,
about?
I'll take
Okay.
a look. I'm not sure.
I could have sworn I saw something about that. Maybe it was something else in the internal audit I might be thinking of.
Yeah.
Because it's related to that.
I'll find out and then we can bring it back. I don't think we need it. There's no rush. It's waited this long.
Well, they're pretty minor, hopefully. And if I missed already the definition of LEA somewhere, then my apologies.
Nah,
but I just
I don't
couldn't find it.
I don't think it's in there.
Okay. Does anybody else have anything on this one?
Jesse,
Okay.
for this one, since there's no, not a lot of things, not a lot of discussion on it, I'll make a motion to dispense with the second reading on this one and adopt it as revised.
Okay. Is that assuming the asterisk doesn't mean anything? That's not defined here.
The asterisk doesn't mean anything.
Okay.
And with the definition of the acronym included.
Okay. And Chris seconds. Any further discussion?
There is something on the second full grade page. It said the district holds conditional title for equipment purchased with federal funds unless the statute specifically authorizes federal agency. Title will vest in the district as long as. So I think this is the discussion of who holds title. It's in the paragraph after records. So you have where it says where you're questioning the asterisk, where it says who holds title. Then you have the paragraph that says records are updated as needed.
Yep.
And then the very next paragraph says pursuant to federal regulations, and it discusses title.
Oh, so you think that whole paragraph might be the asterisk?
I thought I saw it somewhere. I think that is the discussion of the definition of who holds title.
Yeah.
Oh, I see you. Right at the top, where it says title will vest in the district as long as the district uses the equipment for the authorized purposes.
Yeah, it says pursuant to federal regulations, the district holds a conditional title for equipment purchases with federal funds. And then it goes on to talk about equipment that's used for, I believe, grants and so forth, and whether or not they keep them. So I think because it's an asterisk because there is that following discussion.
Okay.
Oh, I think you're right, Anne. I'm connecting that dot too. Yes. Because it gives the scenario where the district would hold the title.
Right.
And so the question with the asterisk is who holds title, and then it answers what the scenario would be if the district holds the title and why.
Okay. So we will approve this assuming that that's the asterisk. Is that what we were saying we're going to do?
I think so. Assuming that this page with the discussion about who holds title is what the asterisk was meant to cover, well as defining the LEA in the first instance that it comes up.
Michael, do you have a thought on that?
No, I think that makes sense. I mean, I will confirm it. So like I said, it's up to you if you
Okay.
want to move it now or bring it back up.
Well, the motion is on the floor.
Yeah.
So is there further discussion?
Well, we have these other small changes that we want to look at in the other ones. If you want to give it a second reading, you know, if that's the only thing that's going to be there, it'll be very quick to look at it again and approve it then. And Michael says there's no rush.
Yeah, I don't know. It's fine.
And I can withdraw the motion if that
Okay.
I withdraw my motion.
Okay. So we will just, you know, have this confirmed and we'll take a look at it the next time.
Yep.
Everyone good with that? Okay. Thank you. All right. On to the executive limitations policy, rescind because it's not essential.
Make a motion to rescind.
Thank you, Peter. Who was that, Ann?
Ann.
Okay. So Peter made a motion to rescind the executive limitations policy and seconded. Discussion. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. I think that was everyone. So we'll say that passed unanimously. Speak up if I'm wrong. Okay. Thank you, guys. Okay. All right. So we have a few more to re-review once we get a little bit of clarification, and but that shouldn't take too long because most of those changes were minor. So thank you all for doing our important work of policy. All right. So on to board member reports, and I am going to go in the order I see you guys on my screen. So that means Ann gets to start.
Ooh.
You're muted, Ann. Ann, you're muted.
Thank you. I just wanted to encourage everyone to watch the National Honor Society induction. I believe it's this Thursday. These kids have worked really hard to achieve this award, and I think it's a nice way to honor them. And so I plan on watching, and I hope you do too. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Next, I have Megan.
Thanks, Jesse. I don't really have much to report on tonight. I want to say a big thank you to the administration for being on top of all of the things going on in the community. It's a thankless job, but we really appreciate you, and you probably don't get told enough. I want to thank Matt for his presentation tonight, and I also want to thank Camille for coming on tonight and doing her presentation. I'm looking forward to seeing what she is working towards with the CSE and those things for our students. Every student every day means every student, even those with disabilities. And I think we have a very good reputation in Averill Park for taking care of our students that need the additional help and helping them get to, you know, their best selves. So I want to say a big thank you to the CSE division, because they are really doing a great job. And looking forward to moving forward and hopefully getting past the hardest part of the fall and winter. So everybody stay safe and stay healthy. Thank you.
Agreed. Thank you, Megan. Peter.
Hey, I just wanted to give a shout out to the hard work the teachers and the administration have put in converting to this unusual situation. Having firsthand experience with it, I know what a massive undertaking it is. And I know it's been uncomfortable to start with, but I think everybody's been adapting very well. On the other side of it, the COVID situation, I think, is being handled extremely well. I know there's been some sleepless nights and a lot of discussions with the health figures to try and unravel what's going on. But Jim, I want to thank you and your team for handling that, especially a shout out to the nursing co-directors, because it requires almost an instantaneous response to deal with the situation. So kudos from me, and try and get some sleep. That's it for me.
All right. Thank you, Peter. Chris?
I will echo what my my fellow board members have said in terms of the staff. I would add to it, Mark Bubniak, Dr. P, the folks who are working to allow us to be able to get the students out there to play various sports and to keep us safe. I appreciate their efforts. Dr. P usually is manning the gate there to make sure that everyone's filled out their online form, which I can imagine is a fun job. So I appreciate his efforts to make sure that everyone takes care of it. Having been over to Columbia this past Friday, every district's doing it a little bit differently. So I think I'm glad that we're using the QWERTY, you know, kind of like that little code that you take a picture with your camera and it gets you straight to it, because others are going old school and just using pen and paper. So appreciate the work that they're doing to keep us going here in terms of being able to at least let the kids enjoy some sports and extracurriculars. And the senior night was a lot of fun. Not used to it being so warm to be able to do a senior night, but it was nice to do. It's the unfortunate reality when you have to do it early in the season because you're not sure you're going to make it through the whole season. So go figure. But
Thank you, Chris. Doug?
I'd like to commend the administration and the board for allowing local organizations to use the facilities without charge. I think that's a big step, and I know it's contentious in many other districts, and you're building some goodwill with the community, I think, at a very advantageous time by adopting that stance. So thank you very much for doing that. I also totally support the lighting of the tennis courts for public use. Again, that's more goodwill with the community, and I commend you for that. I'd also like to say that on October 22nd, I'll be virtually attending a district safety meeting. On the agenda would be updates from the building safety teams, emergency drills, an update from Questar, the superintendent, and nurses. And we'll be talking, of course, about COVID relating questions and concerns and emergency drills. So if you have anything that you'd like me to bring up at the district safety meeting, please email me and I'll be glad to bring it up. I intend to report at our next meeting on the what goes on at that meeting, at the safety meeting. Thank you very much. That's it.
Well, thank you, Doug. Samantha.
I will keep it short. I don't know if anybody's as tired as me, but probably you are. I mean, everything everybody has said about you guys there at the administration, you're awesome. I did want to point out, obviously, from my perspective, there's the sort of the complications at the high school level where there's lots of other things going on, but I just want to focus like the younger kids, the efforts that the teachers are doing at the kindergarten, first grade level. It seems, even when you say it out loud, it seems very incongruous to say, yeah, I'm doing a Zoom or a Google Meet lesson with 15 kindergartners, and I'm sure any human would be like, okay. And the patience I mean, it's a little bit like that, I'm not gonna lie. Although I don't know, it's kindergarten, but the patience that the teachers show, I do have the fourth graders sort of doing her thing, and it's challenging with the younger ones, and the teachers, you can hear that they are how they are used to connecting with the kids and what those kids need, and how they sort of are shifting from week to week to give the kids what they need, for the kids who are away, for sure. And I'm sure the kids in school are also, it's a different experience right now. And if the teachers in the schools are doing what the teachers are doing that I'm seeing, it's like the love is coming through. And a lot of what you talked about, like we can see that in terms of them kind of rolling with the punches, them not being afraid to say to the kids, hey, that doesn't work, we're going to try something different. And the kids that I see, because I sort of have to stay there, otherwise my first grader will take advantage. But I see them, they're paying attention, they're having fun, they're sharing what's going on in their lives. So it may not be 100%, but it's working, and you can see the patience and the care that those younger level teachers are bringing. So that's cannot be easy, some of those days, to exercise that patience, and they're doing great, and I appreciate it.
Good point. Yes. Thank you all. And I do want to echo my colleagues saying what a phenomenal job the administration has done handling our first student COVID case. It had to be monumental, huge, to be able to deal with it and kind of in quick order. And you guys handled it as best you could with a lot of communication to our school community, which I think is so important because it stops those rumors. And I certainly appreciate the communication you had in regards to outside activities and gatherings, because I think it's all important to know, for everyone to understand that it works because everybody's doing their part. We can't be diligent in school. And I think the kids and the faculty and the staff, everybody's doing a great job, but then just let our hair down on the weekends, because that's not going to be sustainable for us as to keep those students in the buildings. And I appreciate all your efforts with that. You guys done a remarkable job. The other shout out I want to give is given that the NYSBA, the New York State School Boards Association conference is starting, I think, at the end of this week. But our Averill Park High School Jazz Band is participating in that as some of the performers. And I know we as a board had a link to that performance because it was all virtual. But what a phenomenal job those kids did. And it's really too bad that we can't be there in person to see, and them to be there in person to see them perform. So, but great work with that. And hopefully the students will have an opportunity to do it live at some point in the future, because I think it's a nice thing that we applied and were accepted to perform there.
And Jesse, just to interrupt you, there are pictures in the Onboard magazine for those who.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it's in the spread on the convention. So
perfect.
It's us and Syosset were the two districts, I believe, that were selected. So
yeah. All right. Is there anything anybody else has? All right. No need for executive session, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Megan.
Thank you, Megan. Second.
Anne.
Thank you, Anne. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Pass it. I'm just going with it's passing unanimously. I hope you guys all have a great night. Thank you so much.
Good night.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Bye.
Bye.
Good night.